An Acceptable Time by Madeleine L'Engle, Chapter 5. Promptly at 2, Zachary drove up in his red sports car. It struck Polly again how sheerly felicitous it was to behold, like Hamlet, she thought. He was to behold, like Hamlet, she thought. Hamlet in modern dress, black jeans, and a pale cashmere turtleneck, his black jacket over his arm, dark hair framing a pale face. Tav had likened Polly to the sun and himself to the moon, although Zachary's hair was as dark as Tav's was fair. He was far more a moon creature than a sun creature. He greeted her grandparents deferentially, pausing to sit and tell the Murrays a little about his work in the law office in Hartford. Long hours at a desk, he said. I feel as though I've come out from under a stone, but I'm lucky to have got an internship, and I'm learning a lot. Again, he was making a good impression, she thought. I've done some research on this Ogham stuff, he said. As a language, it isn't that difficult, is it? It really does look as though this land was visited 3,000 years ago, long before anyone thought. Primitive people weren't nearly as primitive as we'd like to think, and they did an incredible amount of traveling to all kinds of places. And Druids, for instance, were not ignorant savages who did nothing but slit the throats of sacrificial victims. They could navigate by the stars, and, as a matter of fact, their knowledge of astronomy was astounding. Bishop Kalubra would agree with that, Polly said. Her grandparents were polite, but not enthusiastic. Zachary said, I'd really like to talk with the bishop. My boss, whom I've been pumping, is erudite and dull. Mr. Murray smiled. Let's keep Polly in the 20th century. His smile was strained. Zachary said, Fine with me. Is there someplace around here we can go? As far as she knew, the village consisted of a post office, store, church, filling station, and a farm equipment place. Her grandfather suggested quickly that they go to the country club, that he'd already called ahead to arrange a guest pass. Polly knew that her grandfather occasionally played golf when he needed to talk to a colleague without fear of being overheard. It's a lovely drive, he told Zachary, especially right now when the colors are still bright. But there's not much going on at the club this time of year if you're not a golfer. My pop is, Zachary said. I plan to take it up when I'm rich and famous. The swimming pool is closed for the winter, but you can get a soda, and there are some nice walks. It was obvious that he wanted them away from the house, and that under the circumstances, was understandable. Do I look okay for a country club? She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. You're fine, Zachary and her grandparents assured her simultaneously. But take a jacket, her grandmother added. Polly and Zachary went out through the pantry, and she took the red anorak off one of the hooks. Zachary pointed to the door to her grandmother's lab. What's in there? Gran's lab. Can we have a peek? I'm really honored to have met your grandmother, Paul, and I'd love to see where she works. Just a peek, she opened the door. It's verboten to go into the lab without Grand, but she won't mind if we just look. Zachary peered in with interest, looking at the counter with its equipment. What's that? It's an electron microscope. What's it for? Oh, lots of things. It proved, for instance, the existence of a plasma membrane bonding each cell, separating it from the internal environment. But I don't think Grand's used it in years. Most of her work is in her head. Your parents are scientists too, right? My father's a marine biologist. That's why we've tended to live on islands. My mom does all his computer work. She's a mathematical whiz. She stepped back and shut the door carefully. Zachary had not parked his car in the driveway, but had left it on the dirt road, which the house faced, so they walked across the lawn. Listen, he said, I didn't mean to turn you off with that phone call. You didn't, but she looked at him questioningly. He was looking at the house. This is beautiful, your grandparents' place. We don't have any houses anywhere near this old in California. I love it, she said. I'm really happy here. I can understand that. He held the car door open for her. As they started off, he pointed to the wing. Hey, is that a swimming pool? Yeah, a small one. The doctor recommended it for Granddad's arthritis. That's terrific. It's the best exercise in the world, my doctor says. Is there good skiing around here? Yes, do you ski? He drove slowly along the dirt road. Oddly enough, I do. Being a totally non-kinetic person, I'm not very good at it, but given time, I might improve. You ski? I've spent my life in warm climates, but Gran says she'll go skiing with me this winter. Once they were out on the highway, Zachary's driving reminded her of Bishop Kalubra's, though it was probably a little less erratic. Gad, the fall's glorious, he said. A couple of my prep schools weren't far from here, but the colors always catch me in the throat. Look at that golden tree there. There aren't many elms left. Isn't it gorgeous? That it is, and there's one maple we see from the kitchen window that's almost purple. I've never seen autumn colors before, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm glad you were here a week ago. It's past its first glory now, Zachary said, but it's still breathtaking. Here we are, Polly pointed to a sign that indicated the long driveway to the country club. At the top of the hill was a large white building with a gracious view across the valley which had been covered by a lake 3,000 years ago. Zachary led her to the bar, where he asked her what she wanted. Don't worry, Paul, I'm driving, so I'm having a Coke. Do I remember that you like lemonade? You do. How nice of you to remember. There's not much about you I've forgotten. He ordered their drinks, and they sat on high bar stools, and the slanting autumn sunlight reached through the windows and touched Polly's hair. Zachary whistled. Whew, I'd forgotten how gorgeous you are. She could feel herself blushing. She understood that she was far better looking now than she had been as an early adolescent. But she did not think of herself as beautiful or even pretty, and now both Tav and Zachary were telling her that she was. You were lovely last summer in Greece, Zachary said, but you're even better now. I'm glad I was able to find you. Me too. She sipped her lemonade, which was nicely tart. It had been an amazement to her the past summer in Athens that Zachary had wanted so much of her company. It was still an amazement to her. What do you do with yourself all day? Oh, lots of things. Gran and Granddad worry about my being bored, but the days slide by so full it's hard to realize at bedtime that another day has passed. Full of what? I study with my grandparents in the mornings. I hike, I swim. We've had friends over for dinner. It may not seem exciting, but it's just what I need. It didn't sound exciting as she told it. But although Zachary had surprised her by knowing about the Ogham stones, and even more surprising had seen Corrales, she was not ready to tell him about Anirul or Tav. Then he reached into his leather pouch. I brought you a present. An unbirthday present, Polly exclaimed. Terrific. He handed her something flat and rectangular, wrapped in pink tissue paper. She removed the paper, and there was a picture, backed by a thin piece of wood, of an angel immensely tall with great wings, bending protectively over a small child. A guardian angel icon. It's beautiful. Thank you. I found it in a funny junk shop in Turkey not long after I left you at Athens airport last summer. When I looked back to wave at you, you looked so sort of lost that I thought that you needed a guardian angel. So when I saw this, it made me think of you. And I got it, and thought I'd give it to you if ever we met again, and here we are. Thanks, Zachary, really, thanks a lot. It's not an original or anything. I don't suppose it has any real value. I love it. She put it carefully into the largest of the anorak pockets. It was really nice of you to think of it. Why do you sound so surprised? Is it because it's a picture of an angel? Well, sort of. I suppose I made it quite clear that I don't believe in anything. She nodded. Take what you can get right now because that's all there is. That's still my policy, but I had a grandmother who really believed in angels and that they care for us. He stopped, drained the dregs of ice from the bottom of his glass. She loved me. Me, Zachary, not some projection. Grandmothers are marvelous, mine is, and Granddad too. I didn't know my grandfather very well. Pa's parents died young. The ones I knew were Ma's parents, and they lived near us. My grandfather was a champion polo player, and he was thrown from his horse and his spine was crushed. And Grandma went right on believing in angels and in me, while he cursed from his wheelchair till the day he died. Another lemonade? No, thanks. Shall we just drive around and see what we can see? Sure, that would be nice. For the first few miles he was silent, and Polly thought that Zachary had just revealed to her, in talking of his grandparents, more than he had been willing to show when they were together in Athens. She glanced at his face, and it seemed very thin. Have you lost weight? The question slipped out before she realized that it was a personal one and shouldn't be asked. Some. Look, that maple's completely bare. He whistled a few notes, then said, If autumn comes, can winter be far behind? Where's that whistle you had the other day? She asked. Oh, I gave it to one of the office boys. I found it used too much wind, he apologized quickly. Sorry, Paul. Polly, sweet, sorry. I spend my days in an office, ruining my eyes and getting no exercise. At this point, I don't know why I'm doing it, but I still seem to want to learn all about insurance and all the legal ramifications. He turned off onto a side road that wound through a pine forest. What about college? She asked. I hope I can go back next semester. I'm not sure a college degree is really necessary, but law schools do. It's a rough world out there, and I've always been determined to equip myself for it, and college is a part of the deal. A plane droned by, far above them. She looked up, but could not see it. It must have passed overhead before its sound followed it. Their road turned sharply uphill. What about you, Paul? What about what? Are you planning to go to college? Sure. Planning to be a scientist? I don't know. I'm interested in a lot of things. One problem is, well, Max said I have too many options. Are you over it? Over what? Your friend's death. Zachary, you don't get over someone's death, ever. You just learn to go on living the best way you possibly can. I got over Ma's death. He sighed. Did he? Really? She wondered. And what about the grandmother who had believed in him? I don't want to get over Max's death. She'll always be part of me, and I'll be more because she was my friend. Oh, Polly. He took his hand off the steering wheel and reached out to touch her shoulder gently. You teach me so much, and I love you for it, Polly. Polly, if I'm going to see as much of you as I want these next few months, there's something I ought to tell you. Then he fell silent. The road came out of the woods, went past a farm, and then offered them a wide view across a valley to ranges of mountains beyond, a far more spectacular view than her grandparents' gentle one. He pulled the car over, stopped it, and sat there staring out. She waited, decided he was not going to tell her whatever it was, when he said softly, Polly, if I died, would you get over me? She turned to look at him. I've always been my own worst enemy, and now it's coming back to me. She saw his eyes fill with sudden tears. Zachary, what is it? My heart, it's never been very good, and now... She looked at his white face, at the slight blueness about his lips, his eyes turning to blink back tears. She reached out to touch him. Don't touch me, please. I don't want to cry, but I don't want to die. I'm not ready, but I've only got... nobody will be specific, but it's not likely I'll make it to law school. Oh, Zachary... She sat, not touching him, honoring his wish. What about open-heart surgery? It wouldn't help that much. If you can take care of yourself, don't work too hard. He shook his head, reached up, and fiercely rubbed away his tears with the heel of his hand. Oh, Zach, I'm hurting you just by being. I don't mean to use emotional blackmail, Polly, sweet. What I'm doing is living as though I'm going to go on living, working in Hartford this semester, planning on going back to college, to law school. My doctors say that's the best thing. Take it moderately easy, but live while I can. So what I'd really like is to see you sort of on a regular basis. Would that be possible? Well, of course, Zach. The words seemed totally inadequate. He started the car again and took off, far too fast. He'd said that he didn't want to die, that he wasn't ready. He'd said he didn't want to hurt her. Slow down a bit, hey? She suggested. He took his foot off the accelerator and drove at a more moderate speed in silence. She did not brake it because there was nothing to say. When they got to her grandparents' land, he turned onto the dirt road the house faced and stopped the car by the wing with the pool. I've been horrible, he said. I'm sorry. You haven't been horrible. He groped toward her to kiss her, and she let his lips touch hers, then gently turned away. She felt deep sympathy for him, but kissing out of sympathy could only lead to trouble. Instead of trying to kiss her again as she expected, he stared out the windshield. Hey, who's that girl? Who? She just went around the corner of your pool, he pointed. Who? Polly asked again. A girl with long black hair, a girl with a long black braid. She turned and ran. And we'll pause there.